Hello, this is Jack Tutor from Attention Magazine. Welcome to Crucial Listening, a new podcast where I sit down with artists and musicians from across the field of experimental sound, and we talk about the albums that are important to them. So each time I'll have a different guest on. I've asked them to pick 3 records that they consider to be important, and then we get together and discuss them at length. So we talk about why they're important, what they like about these records, when they first heard these records. And often this kind of line of questioning and approaching this topic often provides some really fascinating insights into these people as artists and the decisions they make as creators as well. It's something I've long been interested in through Attention Magazine. It's always a question that I'm posing to interviewees. And so it's great to be able to dive deeper into this question with a whole host of people that I admire and that I enjoy listening to. So my first guest is France Jobin, a Montreal-based sound artist who has released music on labels such as Line and Bascaru. She creates incredibly delicate sounds and soundscapes, often that remind me of things such as very brittle glass that would break if clasped too hard, or memories that are on the verge of slipping out of the mind completely. She's currently running a number of installations at the time I'm recording. I believe one of which would have ended by the time this airs, around the region of Italy and Sicily. So there's an installation called Intersperse, which is on until June 17th in Città Sant'Angelo in Italy, and one called Entretemps, which is running until September 30th in Palena in Italy. So definitely go check those out. I'll include all the details in the show notes and also at attentionmagazine.co.uk/crucial listening. So France chose a really wonderful array of records. Selfishly, this exercise also offers me a bunch of recommendations that I can check out, and these ones in particular proved to be really fascinating to me. So without further ado, the first episode of Crucial Listening. Hello, France. Welcome to Crucial Listening.
Thank you, Jack. It's nice talking to you.
Yes, great talking to you as well. I understand, actually, just before we started recording, you made reference to the fact that you're in quite medieval surroundings right now. Could you just share whereabouts you are and why you're there?
Yes, I can tell you. I'm in a building right now that is Museo Laboratorio, which is in fact an old tobacco factory, and it also served sadly as a prison during World War II. And this building is medieval, very, lots of brick, lots of humidity, lots of echo. It's amazing. And I was invited by Museo Laboratorio, Lux and Farmacia 901, which is a label here in Italy, to create a site-specific installation based on the sounds of the Abruzzo region, where I am right now, and the sounds of Museo and the, local environments and so on. So I created sound installation, which is my biggest really so far. I think I have 7 rooms here, 10 speakers, And it's the name of the installation is intersperse, and it's exactly what it implies, is that the sound moves through the space and really interact with each other in a way that such a building provides in terms of architecture. So it's been a blast, really.
I mean, the fact that it's spread over 7 rooms, that sounds like a lot for you to coordinate and to maintain. I mean, how long have you been spending on structuring that in terms of speaker placement and making sure that everything fits together correctly?
Since April 23rd, and the installation opened just this past Saturday, May 27th. It's been a little over a month, yes.
And have you managed to get a feel for how people are reacting to it in these early stages of the installation being open?
Well, yes, in a sense that there are some fantastic artists who actually are from this region. I don't know if you're familiar with Triac, which is Rossano. Oops, I'm going to have to hold on a second there because I have to get Emiliano's name right. But it's Tomb, okay? They are released online. Emiliano Romanelli and Rossano Polidoro.
Yeah, I love those guys. I did an interview with them actually just recently, and I love their approach. It's gorgeous.
Exactly. So Rossano was coming around pretty much every second day. For one thing, bringing me lunch every second day, make sure that I eat, and also was always walking around and very judiciously listening and watching the evolution of the installation from the very beginning.
That must be nice.
Yeah, it was fantastic because also we had great conversations about music, food, and the region and everything. So all of these, like for instance, like this is only Rossano. There's also Fabio Perletta, who's the curator of the exhibit. And Fabio was here quite often as well, overseeing things and walking through the space and seeing how things were evolving and so on. So, but many things really informed this installation because I'm really literally perched at the top of a mountain in a village called the Città San Angelo in the Abruzzo region. And so it's a very small community. It's a very, medieval village. Very small community. Very few people speak English. And it's been wonderful because I've been learning tons of Italian to try and communicate and go buy my food and stuff. But there's also Rose Cafe here, which is the local bar. And Rosario has been absolutely amazing. This man, from day one, started teaching me Italian and then the corresponding dialect.
Oh, wow.
So every time I go for an amazing coffee, which I call El Café La Mejora del Mondo, El Mondo, and I'm probably messing up my Italian now, but really, so I get, not only do I get an incredible coffee in the middle of the countryside of Italy, but I also get, personal Italian lessons.
Wow. This sounds incredible.
Yeah, yes, it's been really amazing. And also the director of Museo, who is Enzo de Leonibus, and his son Marco de Leonibus. And Marco has been here with me practically almost every day. And so it's been really an incredible experience overall. And all of these, I'm telling you all these stories because all of these stories really informed the installation and how I was going to create it.
Wow. Well, I'm so grateful that you've taken even, a short amount of time out to speak to me, considering right now you could be sharing company with all these lovely people or getting some incredible coffee or some lovely pizza. So I feel doubly grateful that I managed to steal a bit of your time, France.
Oh yeah, it's no problem because now I'm in between, like this installation just opened on the 27th, and I've got another installation that will open June 4th, and this is like across. I can actually look from my house and from my window, and I can see this mountain. It's Maella Mountain. And this is another festival that is curated by Enzo de Leonibus, the director of de Leonibus, the director of the museum, who are also doing something incredible because, there's many spaces and ruins all over the countryside of Italy that are just literally falling apart. No one is really doing anything with these. And so this festival called Eremi Arte have taken it upon themselves to basically cover a region of maybe 200 kilometers in the Abruzzo region, and I believe the chain of mountains is called Appellini. I have to double check that. And where they are curating artwork all over these places. Like, for instance, I'm going to this mountain that will be 1,260 meters above sea level, where I'm doing an installation in this very old church and a concert as well. And I'm put there because there's electricity there. Other sites don't have electricity, so there's sculptures, paintings, other things. So I think it's really incredible that they're doing this. And I'm very honored that they've asked me to participate as well. So this is just to give you a little bit of an idea of what's been going on since I've been here.
Yeah, well, what a treat. I mean, it's one thing to go and experience these things as a spectator. It's another to be invited to artistically interact with this architecture.
That's right.
So what a privilege. So what are the dates for these installations that are happening?
Okay, Museo Laboratorio in Città San Angelo is the installation interspersed will run until, I believe, June the 17th, and it might be prolongated. I'm not sure. Prolonged, sorry. I'm like between French, English, and Italian now, so I'm actually creating the other Entretemps, which is the installation that starts on Sunday at Madonna dell'Altare in Palena, will run until September 30th.
Excellent. So I'll make sure that that's in the show notes as well, so that people can, can go check that out and, get all the details if they perchance happen to be in the area and want to come along. We should proceed with the main body of Crucial Listening, which is that I asked you to pick out 3 albums that you deem to be important to you. You've sent back what to me seem like 3 really wonderful offerings, one of which I'm already pretty familiar with. 2 of them I'm not at all, but have been real revelations to me in terms of listening to them as I've been preparing to speak to you. So if you'd like to introduce your first pick, that would be great.
Okay. The first album is Miles Davis' Kind of Blue. It's basically my Bible. That album I can listen to many times a day without ever getting tired of it. There's a sense of understanding of what silence is, and it's absolutely brilliant. This is my go-to for anything. If I'm struggling with something, this is the album that brings me back to my core. Essentially, if I'm really struggling with, I'm trying to create a piece, or I'm working on an album, and I feel that I'm getting away. Well, actually, there are 2 things that do that. There's a Richard Chartier print that I have in my studio as well.
Oh, nice.
And yes, and so those are the 2 things that actually bring me back on track.
And do you know what it is about this record? Is it something you're able to pick out which makes it something which allows you to get back on track?
Yeah, it's the lack of notes. And everything is really well paced. There's not one extra note that should be there. The feel also is brilliant. You can really get a sense of pacing with this album, and the respect of silence and pauses is really what gets me with this album. Honestly, the riffs are never, too complicated. But they're just perfect. It's just that I don't know. I mean, this album for me is just perfection.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a metaphor for what I eventually hope that eventually I'll get right one day. Essentially.
Do you mean that in terms of applying silence and I guess deliberate action in a way that's, I don't know, feels entirely purposeful and entirely right?
Yes, there is that, and there are also, the riffs and the feel and the rhythm section also, which is just perfect, steady, never over the top. Nothing is over the top with this album. And so it's really an idea, a concept that I would be really happy to read, which is something similar to that in terms of the relationship between sound, notes, silence. It's just the perfect amount of everything. And the perfect lack of everything also. That's very important.
Yeah. I mean, I think something... So with Miles Davis, I myself, over the past few months, have been diving quite deep and basically what I would consider to be discovering for the first time why he is so wonderful. I mean, I've listened to his material before, but I think the past few months I've had a real understanding and enlightenment of why there's such significance to this material and how it can be important to me. I mean, one thing I've noticed in that process is, and I think you've essentially alluded to this yourself as well, is the beginning of the pieces, that period at which Miles is absent and not playing.
Yes.
I just find myself, anytime I hear a piece of his that I haven't heard before, waiting for the moment at which he comes in and understanding that that's the moment at which he decided that his presence would be a more crucial inclusion than his absence, which is just wonderful.
It's that moment where, I don't know, I mean, I'm not speaking for him, but it's that moment that I understand as this is the moment that I will play something that will elevate the piece.
Yeah.
So I can give you a funny story. You know Marcus Miller, the bass player, right?
Yes.
I don't know if you're familiar. So back in the day, I think Miles Davis, there's a story around that Miles Davis was giving him a lift somewhere. They're driving in a car and like 5 minutes go by and Miles Davis says nothing. He's just driving. And then something, I think at a red light or something, he just turned around and he looked at Marcus and he just said one thing to him. He said this one sentence to him: "You play too many notes." And then kept on driving, and that was it, right? And this is it's funny. And this is something I think Marcus Miller was given an honorary PhD at some university in the States, and this is in his acceptance speech where he's telling the story. And of course, he didn't listen to Miles, but it's a great little snippet of time where you really understand, like even the timing of him telling him you play too many notes,
Yeah, it's perfect. That's brilliant.
It's great.
Wow. And I think as well, just the way in which this record slots together and self-refers is so incredibly satisfying. It's like a symmetrical object. It's like a circle or something, Is that something that you connect with as well?
Absolutely, because the transitions also, which I'm really crazy about, like I'm completely OCD about transitions. And so the transitions in this album are also absolutely sublime.
Mm-hmm.
Not only transitions between tracks, but also transitions within tracks.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's really, those are all very important elements.
Do you remember the first time you heard it and where you were and how you felt about it?
Oh my God, that would be a long time ago.
So it's not something that you can recall then, I guess?
No, because I listen to so much music, but there's certain albums that keep coming back. And then over the years, that's why I was able to give you those 3 albums literally immediately, because those are the ones right now at this moment. With Miles Davis, always. The other two might, one of them might disappear for a while and come back, but Miles Davis is the constant of the 3.
And are there any other Miles Davis records that you have a strong connection with? It sounds like none with which you have the same strength of connection, but is there...
Well,
oh, right.
Okay.
I've opened a box there, have I?
It's because it would be very different album, but it's Bitches Brew.
Yeah. That was my first record, I think, of his I heard.
Yeah, and there's another one also that I have. Hold on, because I want to give you the right Ascenseur pour l'échafaud, which is also the soundtrack to Louis Malle's film Ascenseur pour l'échafaud.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, this is, so the movie in English is called Elevator to the Gallows. That's a brilliant, brilliant album. 1958, that's another one.
And so that was just before Kind of Blue then, which was 1959.
Yeah, so this was, Ascenseur pour l'échafaud, which is, no, actually, recorded in 1957, and it came out in 1958. Yeah, it's on Fontana Records.
Right.
That's also another amazing Miles Davis album.
Well, my search continues then. I'll be checking that one out. It seems to be endless, which I'm certainly not complaining about. So if you wouldn't mind introducing your second pick and also saying a bit about why this one is important as well.
Okay, the second album, I believe I gave you Johnny Mitchell, Hejera. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's about that album. I first heard when I was into a lot of jazz and a lot of different stuff at a certain point, and it really struck me on many levels. First of all, Johnny Mitchell as an artist, as a vocalist, but also as a writer. As a writer, she's just incredible lyrics. It's really poetry, but the level of poetry put to music here is a notch above anything else I've heard, because she uses very different tuning on her guitar. She used to. I don't know what she's doing. I don't think she's playing anymore. She's painting now, but she uses very definite tuning on the guitar that gives that album the sound. And of course, the other element is Jaco Pastorius, who was an incredible guitar player. Bass player.
I mean, this one was particularly the one that was a revelation for me personally. I think I'd had an awareness and I'd always been quite allured by Joni Mitchell's music, but had never really sat down with an album from start to finish. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, so this one was I mean, so distinctive. I've heard
Yes.
bits of her material from across her catalogue, but this had such, even on, first listen, it feels strange talking to you about this, because I guess there's in a way maybe a gulf between us in that this album is so close to you and it's still a very new thing to me. But
Yes. Well, I'm glad I can introduce you to that.
Yeah, thank you. It has such like a thematic consistency, like the style of her playing and the sound of the instruments has this very strong quality. And I understand she wrote it a lot while she was traveling as well. Is that right?
Exactly, yeah. This is all about, most of it is about being on the road and understanding what that means and the loneliness of being on the road and how it affects your relationships and, and the people you meet and so on. It's brilliant.
There's a sense of everything being up in the air, and I think it sounds like that her collaboration with Jacko came from a certain displeasure with the style of bass playing that had been on a lot of records where the root note seemed to be this thing that couldn't be deviated from. But for a record that was written on the road, it just seems so appropriate that there's such a lack of stillness,
Yeah, it's brilliant because she embraces, like in the lyrics, she really embraces the loneliness. She embraces, the moments where she feels down and all of that. And she makes it lyrically something beautiful, and it really makes you think about all these things in a different way. And here I have another little story about her and Jaco Pastorius. Like, they did a lot of live shows while he was still alive, obviously. And one day she bought a Roland, I think in the 70s, the Rolands. I can't remember the exact model, but it was a guitar amp that she just got herself. And they're about to go on stage and play. So the amp is there on stage. She's never used it. And she gets on stage and Jaco is already connected to the amp and playing. And normally she would have just say, "Hey, get off my amp." But she has such respect for him that she didn't say anything, and she just used another amp and they amplifier, and they started doing the show.
Wow!
So that's another little, jewel of a story there, in terms of how she viewed us playing and how much respect she had for him and what she felt he brought to her.
Maybe you can tell me, France, did they collaborate much beyond this record in terms of other recorded projects?
Oh my God, I don't know. I know they did a lot of touring together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be Shadows and Light.
Okay.
It seems to be another album. Ejera and Mingus are two of them. Yeah, Mingus. He played on Mingus as well.
Right.
Yeah, for me, she's touch and go, which is actually quite fine with me, because I think if an artist is doing what they're supposed to do, then they need to be exploring, and therefore I shouldn't like everything they do. And she falls in that category. There are certain albums for me that really don't resonate at all, and there's certain albums of hers that are just absolute, okay, great, this is perfect, so this relates to what I think an artist should do, and in other words, if I like everything, it's okay, but then does that mean that the artist is not evolving in any way?
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned that you've been listening to a lot of jazz when you got into this record, and this record seems to have fallen within a phase which I understand to have been associated with, I guess, Joni Mitchell working more primarily with a jazz influence.
Yeah.
So was that why it held particular appeal to you, that it just struck you at the right time?
No, it was really the sound. It was really the sound that got me. It was Jaco's fretless bass and her guitar, and how the actual melodies of the sound were structured, and the chord changes were just crazy.
Yeah, the chord changes are bizarre.
Yeah, the chord changes are insane. And again, I come back to transitions, and those transitions are just awesome. The chord changes are bizarre. I know she tunes her guitar not in a normal way a guitarist tunes. So this is why her playing with Jaco worked really well because he played a fretless bass, and so there was a lot of understanding, I guess, and complicity between the two, which I don't know if you can use complicity in English, but
absolutely.
Okay. And so for me, it was not so much that it was jazz. It just so happened that this was created while I was listening to a lot of jazz and it came out, but it was just the sound of it. It just threw me for a loop. I couldn't stop listening to it.
And we've also spoken a bit about the fact that she wrote it on the road, and the record is a manifestation of that circumstance. Yeah. Is that in itself something you relate to? In that, I mean, this feels quite pertinent to be speaking to you about now, given that you were doing a site-specific installation. So I guess environment is a key part of your practice. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, there are many elements that are similar, except that I'm not so how can I say, I'm having a lot of fun when I'm on the road. So I because of the people that I meet, basically. And the situations that I'm put in were at times just like totally hilarious. But there are moments where, I feel, wow, like I'm away from home, I'm away from everybody. So there are those moments, and those moments I've learned to really appreciate and actually use while I'm creating.
So that's something that's come into play over time, would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. At first, I would just be down and not understand what was happening, but now I have a lot more experience, and I'm like, okay, so now I'm feeling, a bit down, so it's time to get to work on some music and see how I can, translate that.
Yeah. So I guess there's maybe a twofold benefit to that, in that it's a means of processing times at which you don't feel great, but then also a means of making creative work from that.
Yes.
That's quite interesting.
Well, because, I have this little theory that I came up with, which is like the theory of the jar, like a jam jar kind of thing, So I have this funny theory that I find that most people are walking around with this jar inside themselves, and the lid's always closed tight, right? So people are just going through life, blah, blah, blah. And I think artists are in a situation where they're walking with that jar, but the lid is always open. And so because to be able to create, you have to be able to take in all this stuff that's coming in, right? And so one feels a little bit more intensely than normal. So you feel pain a little more intensely. You feel sadness a little more intensely. You also feel joy a little more intensely, right? But for that to be able to be communicated into sounds and music, that lid has to be open, because all of these experiences and so on have to go into that jar, and then from the same jar you need to create something to come out, right? So I don't know if I'm making any sense here. It's kind of difficult to explain.
No, absolutely. That definitely makes sense to me.
Okay.
Is it something that you find now is an impulse and comes naturally to you, or is there a process where you have to unscrew the jar?
No, it's natural now. I mean, I came to that realization while trying to understand my ups and downs.
Right.
Okay, and while trying to understand my ups and downs, and I'm observing people, the world, my life, everything, and then I came up with this, oh, look at that, and then I came to realize that those moments where I go down are actually moments to be cherished, not moments to be feeling depressed. I'm in the sense that, I mean, it's not a depression. It's just like, you hit it down, and I've just come to accept it as, well, that's the other side of me being able to be happy and create and all of that, right? I need this to be able to do the other.
Yes. Absolutely.
So it's not something that I can separate. So I need to find a way for this to live within myself, my head, and so on, so that there is no conflict and we can all live happily ever.
Oh, beautiful, France, and it had a lovely ending as well. So, with this Joni Mitchell album, do you have a particular favourite track?
On Edgera?
Yes.
I think Refuge of the Roads.
I fell in with some drifters, cast upon a beach town, Winn-Dixie cold cuts and highway hand-me-downs, and I wound up fixing dinner for them in Boston, Jim. I well up with affection, thinking back.
So, let's go on to your third choice.
Yes, this one is A Day in New York by Ryuichi Sakamoto, Jacques Morellenbaum, and Paula Morellenbaum. Now, this is an interesting one. I was introduced to this in Japan in 2012 by Yuki Aida, who runs the label Murmur Records. And I was on tour in Japan, and I think we were cooking dinner one night, and he put this on, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And the album that I have right now is the album we listened to that he gave to me, because he felt, like I just fell in love with it.
Ah.
It's all Antonio Carlos Jobim songs.
Yes, yeah. So I understand. So it's and apparently he was some kind of like bossa nova kind of champion. Is that right?
Oh goodness, yes. Do you know the girl from Ipanema?
No, I don't. No, not at all.
Okay, so you got to listen to that song. I'm sure you know it. He's the writer, but yes, Antonio Carlos Jobim was a god of bossa nova, CCC.
Wow.
And see, now I'm speaking Italian. Okay. So from what I understand from this album is that they asked Antonio Carlos Jobim's wife if they could go and record in his house.
Right, okay.
And I believe that's what was done. And I believe that his son is on the album. There's many, stories about this album. So it seems to have been released in 2003.
It doesn't sound like that to me. I don't know what I was expecting, but it sounds older than that.
Yeah, it sounds older than that. So that's why I'm not quite sure, because I'm looking at photos too. I think it might be a re-release. I thought it was released like much earlier than that. So I thought it was released like in the 60s.
Yeah. So I've heard a few bits by Sakamoto. I'm probably most familiar with his stuff with David Sylvian and Christian Fenez. So this one kind of...
Yes, it's not something you'd expect, right?
No, exactly. Yeah. I was not expecting this.
But... I love this album. Because he also brings, like if you've had the chance to listen to it, he's mixing like chords and arpeggios from the Brazilian bossa nova with the Japanese scale. It's brilliant.
Wow. So there was a lot of freedom then, I guess, to work within the original material, right?
Yes. I mean, the structure, the songs, the lyrics, and the structures are very much the same. But I hear Sakamoto all over the place taking liberties, and I'm laughing every time because it's so good. Because it's so like he'll go. There's a song like ta da 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 ta da 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 da, and then he'll go ta da 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 da. And it fits, right? But it's two different cultures. It's great.
That's incredible, because I didn't realize. So it wasn't what I expected to hear from him, but then I did a bit of reading, and it mentioned that he was a bossa nova pianist as a teenager. So actually it makes perfect sense, and it's kind of nice that he's come back to this style which has such a presence, and now he's a master, you know, and what a lovely idea.
I absolutely love this album. I totally fell in love, and thanks to Yuki and my Japanese friends who introduced me to this, you know.
Yeah. I mean, does Yuki know that you've gone on to... I mean, obviously he saw you fall in love with the record.
Yes, he did. Yeah, him and his wife, they both watch me just like completely fall in love with this. Yeah.
Wow. And how often do you listen to it now?
These days on the road, very often, every night.
Wow.
Yeah. Because we go from the Johnny Mitchell on the Downs to a day New York, and that's what keeps me in a good mood. If I can feel myself going down, all I have to do is put desafinado, and it's over.
Oh, wow.
Then I'm in a great mood, and I'm like, all right, I'm cooking, and everything's good.
It must be great to have these records that you can just have on your person, like tools, and know that they're always there.
Yeah, it's very comforting. This album has a lot of musicality to it. This is why I really like it. I love the simplicity of the voice of Paula. Her voice is just amazing, and it's almost like, I don't know, it's not monotone, but there's not, again, you know, there's a very simplicity, minimal aspect to her voice, which is also kind of a signature of Brazilian bossa nova with the vocalist, which I really, really like. There's not this over singing or this American vocal gymnastics, you know.
It's it's like feels like it's well within her range, and that absolutely, because this is not easy. This is by all means, it's not easy stuff to sing. And the other thing that I love about this album is the rhythms. The rhythms are absolutely crazy. Yeah.
There are so many things going on, and the reason why I'm listening to it so much is because I still don't understand what they're doing.
I don't know what your experience is with bossa nova outside of this. Is that something inherent to bossa nova, or is that something that this record has particular flair for?
It's inherent to Brazilian bossa nova. There's a definite specific type of rhythm for Brazilian bossa nova, yes. Which will differ if you go to Argentina, or if you change country, things will change. But this is definitely very specific.
One thing I've noticed across all of your picks is the chord changes are always really... And transitions, I think transitions has come up a lot, I think, on this record as well. The chord changes are beautiful. It's interesting that seems to be a particular draw for you.
It's a constant, yes.
Saiba que sem mim provoca imensa dor. Só privilegiados têm ouvido igual ao seu. Eu possuo apenas o que Deus me deu. Se você insiste em classificar meu comportamento diante musical, eu mesmo mentindo devo argumentar que isso é bossa nova.
Are there any other records outside of these three as well which have maybe honourable mentions, I guess?
Honourable mentions. Yes, one which you probably may or may not expect, but Atom HD.
Oh, really?
Yes.
No, I didn't expect that.
Yeah, and particularly one track, Riding the Void, is absolutely brilliant in terms of transitions and melodies. It's insanely brilliant.
There's a good key change in that one as well.
Yeah, there you go. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah.
I struggled with that record for a bit. And then I think there came a point, like a very distinct point, where it clicked. And it was probably the point at which I could stomach that track featuring, man, what's that vocalist called? Jamie
Nidell.
Yeah. It was hard work to begin with. But I love that piece now.
Yeah.
Wow. So, I mean, just to, in case people haven't heard it, I guess it's like, it's a kind of serious record in that he clearly put a lot of work into it, but there's a definite parody touch to it, isn't there? There's like almost like a parody of like electronic music and of commercial outputs. How would you describe it?
Well, how can I say? It's just musically, I really, really love the album. I happened to see this performed live, and I remember my reaction with what was the track? Oh, I can't remember the track now. Was it Pop Music?
Pop HD?
Pop HD, not Pop HD, but the other one where he talks about Sony.
Oh, Stop Imperialist Pop.
Yes, Stop Imperialistic Pop, yeah. And I saw this performance live, and I was laughing so hard, because the sense of humor was just so good. And I was just standing there, like, laughing, because it was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah, so unexpected. I don't know. This music has such a reputation, I think, unfairly, I think, often, of this straight-faced, no joking precision. And I think the way that he riffs off that as well.
Yeah. Well, people have to get over that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
People have to get over those hang-ups and just listen to the works for what the works offer, Like, again, in this album, I think it's the same thing that run through all the other three albums is like transitions and like a certain perfection in in detail and so on. But also, I mean, philosophically, this album is a blast, because it's such a blatant like a comic parody of the world we live in.
Yeah, and that My Generation cover as well is ridiculous. So good.
Yeah, but I think it's great because people are dancing to this.
Yeah.
So that's the funny part of it. So that's like the double. There's all kinds of stuff going on here.
I think like as a choice of cover, so on the nose in terms of like how many they could have done. I don't know. It's the song to cover, and there's a certain like, I don't give a shit. Here we go. I'm covering it,
Yeah.
When our hands touched. On the dance floor.
France, this has been awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time out to share some of your...
Oh, you're very welcome. It's nice to share. It's really rare that someone asks me what I'm listening to. It's great.
Yeah.
Because I listen to some crazy stuff, so...
Clearly.
Yeah.
And if people want to check out your own stuff as well, France, where should they be headed online? Where should they go?
SoundCloud, France Jobin.
Fantastic. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much for joining me, and we'll speak soon.
Will do.